Hi, everybody. I'm Rudyard, the creator behind WhatifAltHist, and I'm sorry, but we had a couple technical problems. And because of that, I could not appear until right now. There was problems with the email and bugs that are going to get worked out right now. And I'm just glad to take your questions. Apparently, the audio went out. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? I'd like affirmative.
Yeah, I can
Okay,
hear you
amazing.
perfectly.
Okay. It's great that we've got a room of 100 people. I think that's a good number. It's going to go up over time. I know that a bunch of people are watching this on YouTube right now. And let me just check for my guys on YouTube. Wow, like 600 people are watching this. That's a lot.
Oh,
From
you
previous
should
live
all
streams, the
join.
number we got up to around 2,000, but my channel's tripled in size since then. So I think the total if I had to guess, I mean, knock on wood, this might not happen, and it's dangerous to make predictions like this. I think we could get about 5,000 people on this chat, which would be incredible. But Matt is one of my best friends. He runs this company called Pearl, which it's a bunch of things. I think Matt can explain it best for himself. But Matt also loves history and politics, and we're just here to have a conversation about the problems that could happen in the world system, such as famine, recession, the problems in China, the problems in America that could really could disturb the world system. And of course, we're going to take some of your questions, but let's just get started. I'll start with Matt, who just what is Pearl?
Hey guys, so just as hold on a sec, we're getting some feedback.
YouTube is having sound problems. Let me just check for the YouTube. There might have been a thing where the audio was structured around a certain.
Yeah, so Bjorn's on it. I just periodically have to mute myself. But for those of you who can hear, so basically Pearl is a product that's basically it's designed to be a creator-led community of people who love the same thing. So an online community based around interest, passions, or hobbies, or a creator. So in this case, how it came about, I guess the backstory is I didn't even know there was like an online community that organically formed around WhatifAltHist, despite having watched hundreds of videos. And so there's a bunch of problems that appeared with that and reasons why Rudyard wasn't too involved with them. So we came together and built Pearl to basically combine all the best things about different things such as Reddit, Patreon, Discord, Clubhouse, Linktree, Cameo, all into one platform. So what this is really designed to be is effectively the home of WhatifAltHist in the future, where we'll have like round tables where audience members come up and do audio rooms talking with WhatifAltHist and his various associates. And we also just talk about videos and react to them and things of that nature. Yeah, and there are going to be bugs. This is a new product. And we are also very open to suggestions for things to build. One of the cool things we want to build is basically geographic-based chat rooms, so you could find other WhatifAltHist fans who live in the same area, and you could go get drinks with them and meet up. I'm in New York a lot, so I think that'd be really fun because I've become really good friends with a lot of Rudyard's friends through this. If you love the same thing, you're probably going to be friends. Anyway, take the stage, Rud.
Okay, so I mean, for those of you who watch my videos, you've come to I and a lot of other people in my field think that something bad's going to happen in the next year. And if not the next year, then the very near future, because you look at, sorry, did someone say, wait, is this just an OnlyFans? It is. Perfect. I'll be sure to be sending nudes out here for the correct price. And yeah, so I talked to this ad nauseum on this channel, but at the same time, you see all these variables, about 20 so, that Peter Turchin and David Hackett Fisher and other historians have found that effectively lead to world crises. The last perfect example of this in the Western world being the French Revolution, the example for that being the 30 Years' War, and the one before that being the Black Death. And it's a bunch of variables like average age of marriage going above 28, inequality, problems with people's average wages, the cost of real estate, inflation, and basically every single variable lines up that will have a crash similar to the French Revolution. And I don't mean similar in exact variables. We don't have a lot of nobles to kill anymore. But at the same time, similar in scope. And I once read a history of the Bronze Age that said that the reason that the Bronze Age world fell was really multifaceted, in that there were problems with social issues, there were military technology changes, there were barbarian invasions, climactic changes. But the Bronze Age world, strange as it sounds, was so interconnected that when one part of that world fell, the other part of the whole system collapsed. And I think that's plausible for the current world. And I think there's a series of choke points that could, in effect, ripple across the whole world system, thus causing giant problems in the next couple of years. And we're here to cover that.
So, Rudd, I think something that'd be great is this whole concept of the upcoming crash and all the various factors that play into it, such as economics, political division, the famine that I guess we're going to see now, Russia, China, etc. I think it'd be really interesting to just hear you off the cuff go ahead and talk about how we're going through such a major period of global change and what you think that process is going to look like and what you think is going to come afterwards. It's actually my favorite thing to hear you talk about. I think it's just the most interesting thing ever.
I mean, like, Matt, you literally just listed 10-hour-long videos, so I'll do my best to basically just
sign me up.
Yeah, I mean, really, they would make sense profit-wise, and it's what I am working on. I am actually making a bunch of videos about the future crash, where, just some spoilers coming up, I'm making a video, Will We Have a World War?, where I come to the conclusion that a world war isn't the most likely scenario, but something like the 30 Years' War might be, or a bunch of different proxy wars with social collapses and countries not really going to total war, but then them also having internal social problems and various factions and all that stuff. That's one of the next videos. Another video is the collapse of China. And now I'm making a video about the collapse of China. Video is going to come out in the next few days, same as that other one. Now I'm writing a video about the future of Europe and how Europe will deal with this crash. But there's a bunch of different choke points, as I said before, that result in the world system collapsing. And one of the most obvious ones, and one I made a video about like a year ago or like 9 months ago, was about how we're almost certainly going to have a financial crash, where we are the era of the highest money printing ever in history. And I'm not saying that lightly. There has never been a time in history in which governments are printing as much money as they are now. And there is not a single period in history not related to a major war like World War II where the money printing was really necessary that doesn't result in a massive social collapse afterwards, because the truth is that governments are printing that much money. It means there's another problem, which is why they're doing it. And that problem catches up with them. At the same time, the American economy is just not healthy. And the way you predict recessions, the world economy is not healthy, but the way you predict recessions is that once there's a fundamental disjoint between politics and between the economy and the real world, there's going to be a crash. And I mean, I think the best example of this was during COVID, where your average person was barely getting by, but the stock market was just rising. And because of that, it was just, and we see a lot of that where average people are barely getting by, but the stock market keeps going. And I mean, as a person who's moving to New York right now, it's just insane to see how prices have kept rising for 3 years straight. And that financial crash will hit, and then it'll spread across the whole world. And the big problem is that everywhere in the world, people are barely getting by. Even in wealthy countries like America, if you lower an average young person's income by a third, which would happen in a recession, people just can't make it. And once people get desperate, rebellions happen. And we saw that during COVID, where there was really what amounted to rebellions in major cities across America. And at the same time, you saw the Capitol riots, which the Capitol occupation on January 6th. And just imagine how much that could be magnified if things went wrong. So first choke point, financial crash. And I could continue to China. China has the exact same problems, very worst. but much worse. And that's where I'm going to transition to, where China's got a tremendous amount of internal problems. And in my next video, I compare them to l'Ancien Regime France, where France before the French Revolution, because in China right now, China is ruled by the rich more so than anyone else, where the Communist Party is a soft autocracy, where it can't govern the same way that Stalin would, for example, but it does govern through making alliances with local elites. And in those alliances with local elites, they are able to the Chinese government is able to manage its large nation. But through making those concessions to the local elites, China becomes a plutocracy, which is ruled by the rich. And so you see lots of corruption, lots of bizarre local regulations that don't make sense. And on top of that, you have massive problems with workforce, where the whole 996 movement, or people working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, is often considered good. And people can't afford to have kids. The Chinese birth rate's between 1 and 0.5, which is just, it's horrifying. And I mean, I'm actually literally making a video about Chinese problems, but I don't think China can survive because their birth rate is so low that their population is going to halve over the next 60 years. And because of that, their country cannot survive. And so China, and if we're looking at the events that are happening in China right now, which, for example, are the protests or the shutdowns in Shanghai, and the shutdowns of the whole of a lot of China, where many Chinese areas are closing their borders. Some of the biggest provinces, the Chinese government is cracking down in really bad ways, which is destroying their agriculture. And so we think there might be famine and a collapse in communist power in China. And again, when people get desperate, bad things happen. And I would say that we should be really worried about China, either it collapsing internally, which would, of course, spark a collapse in the world order, or it would, or China going outwards to fight because it has to maintain its local power. The third crisis I worry about is the food crisis, where because Ukraine and Russia are massive food exporters, and because both countries are taken out of the world system, it means that. Sorry, I'm just going to ban someone.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Okay, amazing, man. Can you get Bjorn to just permanently be banning people that are breaking the rules?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, amazing, man.
The purge. It'll take a couple minutes though.
I understand. And so, I mean, that means it creates a collapse in the world order where the price of grain goes up. And we're seeing similar things in America, where American supply chains just don't work right. And so America is going to stop exporting food to a lot of the world, but keep it internally. South America is also having problems exporting its agriculture. And with places like Africa, where Africa has seen its population go up by 5 times since the 1950s due to fertilizer, if Africa can't get fertilizer, there's just going to be mass starvation, same as the Middle East. So a lot of very respectable people, including Peter Zeihan, who many of you are fans of, think that there's going to be famine around the world by the end of the year. And so we're basically going to get the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. We've already had plague. We're going to get famine. War follows from all this tension, where I talk a lot about the crisis of the 21st century, which is driven in effect by the whole thing, the same stuff that drove the French Revolution, but also you have great power politics, where, as I predicted, Russia had to lash outwards at Ukraine to stop to stop their own internal problems. But I mean, Europe has internal problems, America has internal problems, India has internal problems. And I could talk for hours about each individual country, and you guys will probably keep asking me this stuff. But everyone in the world is getting desperate, and we're going to see the 4 horsemen. And I guess we just need to have good places to talk and prepare for it. Velika, you need to go. Sorry, my cat is in here bothering us.
Nice. Cat cameo.
Exactly.
That's funny. These
Well,
comments are fun. Real
you guys
quick,
did
let
a
me
good
hear.
job of controlling the chat.
Yeah, we built some AI that auto bans like, words you'd imagine it would ban, plus also like images. But please, guys, don't try and put that to the test. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Like,
Also, sorry, go on.
you know that whole Vegas thing where people, sorry, not Vegas thing. You know how people were going to charge the Area 51 and try to
Yeah.
pay for it, and 2 million people were going to do it, and then they realized the government has automated machine guns around Area 51. That's what will happen if you try to spam the chat.
Oh, also, as a note, periodically, Rudyard will have to just make little announcements. So, hey, everybody who's watching on YouTube, there is a like 5 to 10 minute delay, I think, for the YouTube live stream. So, if you want to be more up to date with what's going on, join Pearl. There should be a URL present. It's click.pearltribe.co/WhatifAltHist. Once again, it's click.pearltribe.co/WhatifAltHist. But yeah, this is where the live streams are going to be for every Saturday for the next few weeks. So hop on in. All right, back to you, Rudyard.
I've been talking for a while, Matt. What's your take on the crisis? What would you like to add about these
Ooh. Oh
about
man,
these
it's like,
worrying things? Talk
it's my
about what you
favorite.
see for the financial crash.
Um, Yeah, I mean, like, I guess I'm gonna probably just go to more like high level one and then zero in. But my thoughts are that I think we're about to see a very interesting time period where we see a 30-year socioeconomic cycle, an 80-year institutional cycle, and a multi-century Turchin cycle all come to a conclusion, starting basically now, and that we're going to see probably the entire global order shift. So what I think is going to most likely happen is we'll see big political instability inside the West and probably everywhere, and we'll most likely see a fundamental change in the ideology. So I think the West is going to go through a battle between traditionalism and social justice, and I imagine traditionalism is going to win. And then at the end of it, you're going to see the United States and the West basically emerge with heavy political unity rather than political polarization like we currently have. And this is me regurgitating other people's theories as a note. So like none of that is really unique content, but it's interesting. And I think we're probably gonna. I think the 30-year war hypothesis of Rudyard's makes a lot of sense, and that we will certainly see a lot of problems. Like we're seeing with Ukraine and Russian wheat and other agricultural exports, as well as fertilizer exports going down. Certainly, mass famine in Africa and the Middle East. You're probably going to see Arab Spring times 10. You'll probably see super ISIS, and this could even end result in Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Iran going at it somehow, and the Turks trying to rebuild an empire if the Americans are distracted. It's always been a geographic powerhouse. There's a reason Rudyard loves Turkey so much, and I think we could see it. And if America's dumb, we won't block it. In sub-Saharan Africa, I think you'll probably see massive conflicts and other horsemen of the apocalypse come and population decrease. South Asia, I don't know its exposure to the issue. In China, I think that's the most. I think with Russia, we'll probably see them fragment. Their demographics are so horrifying that I don't see a world in which they don't. And I think Putin is either the last or second to last leader of Russia. And then in China, I think we are probably about to watch a dynastic collapse of China where their debt is horrifying. Their entire economy has been effectively completely driven by debt since 2008. And Xi is locking them down like crazy and making himself into the most powerful person since Mao because he knows the storm is coming. So I used to think China was going to take over the world. And then I read a ton of books on it during COVID because I was really bored. And I played a lot of Call of Duty then too. Oh, man. Uh, and I think China's in a horrifying position. I mean, you see like bloody wars like the Taiping Rebellion happen periodically, and we very well could see that again. And kind of what we're going to see at the end of this crisis is I think America will emerge politically unified. It'll basically be only reliant on North America for everything. We already are. And everyone else's demographics are going to be declining. Their asabiya, like their spiritual will as nations, is on the decline too. And America is probably going to get a boost similar to what we got post World War II, but less direct, I'd say, at the end of it. So I really think we're seeing America solidify further and further and further into a much more sophisticated neo version of Rome. And Rudyard had me read this book by Amelia Dioncourt, whose name I just butchered, and I'm sure he'll correct in a second. And he
Amelie
talked,
Doriancourt.
There we go. And he talks about how history is a spiral rather than like a circle. And he gave these brilliant analogies on how the United States has basically found a much more sophisticated way to create a global empire than before. But yeah, I think America is going to keep pushing forward and become like kind of the, the nation of all nations in a sense, and just be the spearhead of everything and colonize space. And at some point we'll die. And then like ideally America will give birth to like, I mean, it sounds ridiculous. Like if you said, "Hey, England, 1607, you're gonna give birth to a country called America that's gonna be like 10 times bigger than you and the most powerful nation in human history," people think you're insane. And so I think if you say this, and like Jamestown was an absolute disaster too. So I think if you said the same thing about America colonizing Mars and the moon, it sounds ludicrous, and it might be, but it also might not be. So I could totally see there being like the mantle passed from England to America to whatever our children end up looking like. That's my hope. I'm super bullish on America, very bearish on Europe, China, Russia. The Middle East could have a caliphate resurgence. God save us all. Latin America, I think, is just going to keep piddling along and just be on the sidelines. And I don't think we'll see anywhere else really pop off. That's my take. Hope it's controversial.
Yeah, it's my 2100 map. Yeah. Samo Berja, a friend of mine, he on his Twitter, he had this whole thing where he said a lot of European countries might have to prepare for, we might have to make a term called once developed countries and then apply it to a lot of Europe due to the conditions that might in effect result in Europe's poverty. And my next video I'm writing right now actually is about the future of Europe. And I am not optimistic about Europe. And one of my comments from my video at 2100 is, why do I always see other civilizations reviving, but not Europe? And I'm making a video on decadence right now. And decadence is what happens when your society cuts itself off from the rest of the world. And the partying and the orgies and all that cool stuff, that happens as an extension of not believing that the rest of the world really matters. Because an example of this is that in the 19th century, and the British sent a delegation to China, and the Chinese saw rifles, they saw steam engines and all that stuff. And then the Emperor of China said, "We don't need any of this. Britain has nothing useful." 40 years later, the British broke down every major port city in China, taking basically no casualties, destroying an empire that was probably 25 times the size of their home islands. And that's what I see with Europe, where Europe has created an ideological elite that bases itself. I hate the European concept of the wise state, which is that Europeans think that they have attained some higher wisdom about the nature of history, that they are beyond, that they are inherently wiser than other countries in the world, that war and religion and struggle and capitalism are all archaic things that savage peoples elsewhere do. But the Europeans have reached this higher degree of social development, but that's really just an excuse for laziness. And we see it in how far Europe has fallen behind, where 80% of European billionaires inherited their money and 80% of American billionaires are self-made. Europe is the only big part of the world that's declined economically, where Europe used to be 38% of the world's economy in the 1960s. Now we're at 24. America has a bigger percentage of the world's economy than the European Union, an area that has 200 million people. And the US has remained a quarter of the world's economy since, sorry, I just got to stop for Rudyard Lynch simp 123. I know I got to keep up with my simps. The Vouch debate's back on. He reached out to me 2 weeks ago. We just haven't planned exactly the time. But with Europe, the Europeans don't have an outwards facing view of the world. They're unable to coordinate between themselves. If you were to ask Europeans to form militaries to protect themselves, they'd view it as a moral problem, not as a practical one. If you ask Europe to expand its economy, again, it's a moral problem, not a practical one. And so the Europeans are just wrapped in their own ideological worldview from being so successful for so long. And there's a wonderful book that Matt mentioned earlier called Becoming Caesars by Amaury de Réaucourt about comparing the Greeks and the Romans and the Europeans and Americans. I think it's a very apt prediction. So I think Europe will have a lot of problems. And I said this before in a previous video. I think America and Europe will both go through problems, but Europe will be torn apart by these problems and America will revive itself. America will pull away from Europe to deal from its own problems. Europe will have its problems. America will gradually come into Europe. And I mean, also because these European countries are so small, like France is the size of Texas, I think Europe will gradually be integrated into a single organism, but that organism will be fundamentally American and probably won't even be viewed as American, but that will really be what it is. And we've seen this with the European Union. The European Union is really a secular recreation of the Catholic Church, created by Americans so the French and Germans wouldn't kill each other, where everyone speaks English. And everyone's encouraged not to really have militaries. And I see that sort of thing continuing. But the case with the Asian civilizations is the Asian civilizations all had their decadences thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago, where Amory wrote two really cool books, The Soul of India and The Soul of China. And an interesting point he made was that both China and India stopped taking any future developments into their society around 200 AD or 200 BC. In India, you have all the elements that would later become India, whether the religions, the social structure, the economic structure, all of that solidified in 200 BC. In China, all of that solidified around the birth of Christ. And then no more future developments after that. But then those societies became decadent. And the Muslims, outnumbered 100 to 1, were able to rape India. China got raped by barbarian Mongols from the north, and then Europeans who also raped India. And then the Asian civilizations really had to learn to up their game. And for Asia, I either see them renovating their civilizations and having renaissances, which we're partially seeing because, like, China's pushing big Confucian stuff, India's pushing Hindu nationalism, but also the Industrial Revolution is such a massive shift that I think these countries will have to, over time, change their civilizations. And I really can't tell you if they will die in the process and new civilizations will form in Asia, in the same way that out of the ashes of the Babylonians and Persians and Egyptians came Islam, or if the Chinese and the Hindus and the Muslims will be able to push their civilizations forward in the same way that the Black Death resulted in the Black Death didn't kill any civilizations, it just altered them. So will Asia become new and keep its identity, or will we see, for example, I think a prophet in China is very likely, because China is such a both China and India, because China is such an ideological vacuum where no one believes anything in China. So China's a depressing country to go to because people just believe in materialism, basically, and nationalism. But nationalism will die out once they realize how much their government has lied to them. And materialism will die out once they have economic problems. And then in previous crises in China, for example, the 19th century, you saw the Taiping Rebellion, third bloodiest war in history. And because of that, the a pseudo-Christian prophet arose in South China to lead a successful rebellion. Mao is also another Chinese prophet. In the case of India, I could see the Indians view the world religiously across history. And Amaury de Rinaucourt wrote a really fascinating book, and one of the most fascinating I've ever read, called The Eye of Shiva, which is about how Hindu mystics were able to discover a lot of the fundamentals of modern science in the ancient world through methods we don't understand. But Amaury thought that Hindu mysticism would combine with Western science to form a new religion in India that would spread around the rest of the world. Just to stop, I'm a big fan of Lao Y86. I was actually just watching a video before this. He and Winston Sturzill at Sir Pence, I think they make really good Chinese content. And like, I have Chinese friends, I've studied China. I think they're pretty fair, and it's depressing to see what I think are really CCP Communist Party agents try to take them down. Where I was reading on Quora, is Sir Pence fair? And then everyone, like, he doesn't really understand Chinese culture. He's anti-China. He doesn't have an in-depth understanding. But I mean, really, it makes sense that the Communist Party try to take that guy down because he's one of their biggest online opponents.
Rudyard, I think we have a really interesting question from Grandmaster. He says, will the Islamic world and religion of Islam overtake Christianity and succeed and industrialize in the future after the Great Crisis, or not? It's a topic I know you like a lot.
So. I don't think Islam will succeed the West. The two of them have kept, with the exception of the West's massive expansion over the last couple centuries, the West has been able to the West and Islam have kept pace, and I can't see Islam surpassing America. I can see Islam surpassing Europe, but if Europe ever gets attacked, America would protect Europe since there's so much ethnic unity between them. And an interesting thing is that both America and Islam have been able to maintain their structure for the same reason, in that they're charismatic-based religions, where American Protestantism, if your church sucks, someone will go to another church that's better. And that's not the case in Europe, where the churches were determined by what some king in the 16th century wanted your church to be. And so I could see American Christianity fluctuating, but will survive. And with America's continued dynamism, Europe will be dragged along with America, and Europe will take on American characteristics. And then Islam and the West will be competitors like they've always been. That is if Islam can get off the ground. I totally could see a situation where Turkey builds an empire like Japan did in World War II, where the Japanese seized the whole of East Asia, but they did it in such a bad way that the Americans immediately crushed their empire. And I could see something like that with the Turks, where the Turks seize control of the Middle East if they do it sloppily, and then America crushes them, thus crushing Islamic power.
Rod, do you want to pick some questions out from the chat and hit them?
Sure thing. Just give me a second.
Egypt and Sudan would be an interesting one to get dig into. I haven't followed any updates on it, but from what it was looking like, Egypt is one of the most screwed countries on the planet.
Yeah, I did dig into that beforehand, and I was really wrong. I thought that Ethiopia would win that. So Ethiopia was taking Egypt's water supply, and what they were basically going to do is starve Egypt, a country that is the Nile. No one lives in Egypt off the Nile because it's some of the worst desert in the world without water. And the Egyptians were going to dam it up and basically kill Egypt as a country. And the thing is, Egypt is 1,000 miles from Ethiopia at least, and the Egyptian military isn't very good, and Ethiopia is mountainous. So I thought that was an easy win for Ethiopia. However, the Egyptians proved me wrong, where first of all, the Egyptians launched a coup in Sudan that switched Sudan from being an Egyptian ally, an Ethiopian ally, to an Egyptian ally, thus meaning they could get up against Ethiopia's border. At the same time, they got the Tigray in the area. Ethiopia is an ethnic confederacy between groups like the Oromo, the Tigray, the Amhara, the Somalis, and they got the Tigray to rebel against the other groups, and the Tigray rebellion's actually working. They got pretty close to the capital of Addis Ababa, and with the Tigray rebelling, the Ethiopians can no longer build the dam. And so the Egyptians, in a remarkable way, were able to beat Ethiopia over the dam crisis. At the same time, Egypt is just fucked. Like, the amount of Egyptians in poverty has doubled since the year 2000 because their population growth just keeps on going up. Egypt had a population of 2 million at the time of Napoleon in 1800. It has a population of 100 million now. And with that endless population growth, there aren't enough jobs. Like, I've never been to Egypt, but I heard if you do go, it's just endless poverty. People don't have work. And how does the Egyptian elite deal with this? They do it by moving the capital out of Cairo into the middle of the desert. And what they're doing with this new capital is they have a water park. They're having giant palaces, giant museums. So the Egyptian elite is trying to escape the rest of Egypt in the most French Revolution way possible. And so I just think Egypt is doomed to have a giant revolution. And because Egypt hasn't been controlled by a native dynasty at all from the time of the Assyrian Empire until the British stopped colonizing it, or like 500, 600 BC to 1950, I think that if Egypt falls apart, the chances it gets conquered by another power are pretty high. And I think the most likely option is Turkey. That it becomes a Turk. I don't think the Turks wouldn't actually put movie armies in. They just might build an alliance with the Arab Brotherhood and establish a puppet state. Shut the fuck up, Rudyard Lynch simp.
Rudd, what do you think is going to happen to Israel in like this? Like, I mean, I assume there's going to be a giant conflict between Saudi, Iran, and Turkey, and Israel seems to be a very important tool in preventing the rise of the Turks.
Yeah, Israel's weird. Israel is weird where what they do is they're an iron fist in a heap of sand, and that the Israelis have a remarkable ability to punch, and they're very strong. They're the strongest people militarily in the Middle East, but at the same time, they can't project power because there just aren't that many Jews. And Israel will probably pick the winning side because they don't have a lot of loyalties in the Middle East, and because of that, they will just pick whatever side won't get them killed. As of now, the Israelis have built a beautiful alliance that goes from that goes through Saudi Arabia, the Gulf Arab states like the UAE, Oman, Egypt, Jordan. So all the Arab states in their area are Israeli allies. This is against the Iranian alliance, where the Iranians built a Shia coalition of Syria, Iraq, Iran, parts of Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and the two of them are going to go at it. I don't see the Israelis fighting outside Israel that much because they need to stay in their area or they'll get overextended. Israelis have no incentive to fight in the Middle East outside of Israel. However, Israel could very easily be a kingmaker. In the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, I really don't know who could win. It's a pretty close toss-up. Israel would be a big force in stopping the rise of Turkey unless the two can get an alliance. And as the Muslim world industrialized, I think it makes the possible destruction of Israel more and more likely. But if the Jews have made it this long, I think they'll find more ways to stay alive.
All right, we should pick another out from the crowd. Do you see
Cool.
any? Oh, someone keeps asking about your opinion on Mexican cuisine, which I think is hilarious. So, what is your
What did I
take on
say?
Mexican? Someone is asking about your take on Mexican cuisine, Rudyard.
Matt and I used to live in Mexico together. I'm trying to remember if I've said anything like directly. If they're we're trying to like get it directly out of me. I mean, it's easy to make. It's kind of unhealthy. It tastes good. I did a keto diet in Mexico, and it was just impossible on Mexican food. I've had some of the best food in my life's been Mexican. Or is there anything you directly want out of me?
I'm not entirely sure. There's just some guy who's plugging it. I've not heard about this. So you said there's a crisis going on in Sri Lanka. Have you heard of this, Rod?
There's always a crisis going, or there's often been a crisis going on in Sri Lanka. I don't know what it's about this time. I don't have the details, but like I'd bet a couple $1,000 it's about their Tamil minority, where Sri Lanka is divided between the Sinhalese, who speak an Indo-Aryan language, who dominate most of the country, and the Tamils, who are immigrants from southern India who's who speak a Dravidian language, and they occupy the northern quarter of the island. And the Tamils have always been agitating against the Sinhalese to become part of India. And there was this horrible civil war that happened for like 30 years, where I think the Sinhalese started by oppressing the Tamils, and the Tamils rebelled, and the Tamils became super bloodthirsty in IRA fashion, and then killed a lot of people, and then the Sinhalese government cracked back. There's this rapper, and like this British rapper who is Tamil, and she'd like rap about it 15 years ago. I forget her name though.
One of one thing I find quite enjoyable is Rudyard has nearly as immense knowledge of obscure musicians as he has of history. It is extremely impressive and also quite confusing.
Yeah, it's bizarre where I listen to music as like my main hobby, and so I listen to a lot of weird musicians, and I've also got a fetish for not like a sexual fetish, but you know what I mean. But like I got a pop culture fetish where thank you for that image. I think it's the truth. You should not take my image in vain unless you've got immense balls, because that's what you really need. Yeah, I mean, I listen to pop music, and it's my guilty pleasure, where I pride myself on every song in the radio, I want to know what it is, where the artists are from, um, and like I mean, just for a trinity of my three favorite kinds of music. My three favorite artists. The first is Nine Treasures, which is a Buddhist Mongol metal band from northern China. I work to them. I go through my struggles with them. They've got me through the hardest parts of my life, and I listen to them every day. But it's just a demonic Mongolian. My second favorite band is Maisie Peters, who's like a British teen pop indie singer, and she's like if Ed Sheeran was still good, but also like sang Taylor Swift lyrics. And my third favorite artist is Stan Rogers, who is a Canadian. Wow, Cambodian rock sounds lit.
Yeah, that sounds sick. What
Got
is?
some links to
Could you send a
Cambodian
link?
rock. Yeah.
Yeah, send some cool music links, guys. I'm really interested. Rudyard loves metal, so if you send sick metal, yeah, it's gonna be good right there.
And then my
You'll
third favorite
definitely
artist
get questions answered next week.
is Stan Rogers, who's a Canadian folk singer, and he makes videos of the Canadian working classes as well as Canadian nationalist music. So I just listen to everything.
What's your favorite metal song?
My favorite metal song, I would go with "Last Dying Breath" by Sabaton, which is a song about the Austrian attack on Serbia in 1915, and the Serbian general gave a speech that soldiers, heroes, your lives are gone, erased by your command until your last dying breath. And then there's Tobacco Island, which is a song about Irish convicts being sent to Barbados in the 17th century to die as slaves. And then my favorite Mongol metal song is "Praise for a Fine Horse."
Legend.
I'm gonna get some hot water for give me a minute. But
sure,
I trust you.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best to keep them entertained. All right, so I'm also gonna have to do some more plugs. Hey, everybody who's watching on YouTube, it's delayed by like 5 or 10 minutes, and chat I think is not enabled on YouTube. So hop in on Pearl. This is going to be where we're doing live streams for basically, I guess, I don't know how long, but quite a while. We'll do one every weekend, Saturday, 1 p.m. EST. So hop into Pearl. We're trying to get a critical mass of users in here so it pops off permanently. Also, next week we'll be doing a roundtable. So this week we only had the functionality for broadcasting. Next week, when you guys ask questions, we'll like literally click you and bring you up on stage, and we'll probably have like 4 or 5 people on stage talking, which should be really fun. Yeah. Hey, so YouTube folks, click the URL.
Matt, you'll have no idea how many views this thing has gotten totally so far.
I have no idea.
On YouTube, 8,500 total.
Oh, what? YouTube people, come on, hop in here. What you doing?
What you doing? Yeah, it's 500 concurrent on YouTube, 8,500 total. So people coming in and out.
Oh, okay. Any ideas how we can get more of the YouTube people to port onto here?
No.
Like, I guess we could set the title or the description with the URL. That's probably the biggest thing. I don't know if we did that.
I could do that. Intro to Pearl, go to Pearl for better audio.
And we should throw the URL down too, because I'm not sure if it's even there. Oh, Christopher says put the link in the description on YouTube.
Why didn't we think of that?
That's a great point. We probably would be able to like 10x this viewership if we do that. We're also sending out SMS and email alerts to everybody now. Yep, got it. Thanks for letting us know, guys.
As always, democracy gives the best answers.
Yeah, until like Athens happens.
Yes, and then an excess of democracy occurs, and then people ostracize. I feel like we would have totally been ostracized. Ostracization was an ancient Greek custom where if enough people in a city disliked you, they would basically just throw you out, and we would totally be ostracized, Matt.
Yeah, it sounds like me in college. It's cool. Yeah. Oh my God, I could not handle that school. It was nuts.
Yes, Matt went to Brown, which is basically a social justice seminary where everyone tried to destroy him because we are conservatives and we were going against their religion.
Yeah. Yeah, I was not a popular fellow with the ideological zealots there. Rudd, did you add the link to the YouTube description?
I did, yeah. I added everything.
Oh, okay, cool, sweet. All right, well, let's get back to it then. Oh yeah, you want to talk about I guess should we reiterate how we became friends? Because a couple more people asked
Yeah.
that. Cool. You want to tell it?
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Yeah, so I told this a little bit earlier,
I can
so
do it if
sorry
you
if it's
want.
repetitive. Yeah, let's hear it from your perspective.
Okay, so Matt is a big fan of WhatifAltHist, and he's a CEO who runs this company that we're currently doing this call on. And Matt was a huge fan of WhatifAltHist, and he DM'd me and he was like, "Hey, I can get you to be part of this organization of talented, successful young people that has all sorts of really interesting people in it." And I said, "Sure." And then I got into the organization. It was just a really fun time while it lasted. The organization since no longer exists. And then I was 19 at the time. I just didn't know anything of the world. And my channel was really taking off where I was making enough revenue from WhatifAltHist that staying in college would have just been idiotic. And I didn't like college anyway because I think it's kind of like beta and you should be doing things in the real world. And I hate school as always. Not to hate on people in college, but we all have different paths. And then I then Matt basically called me up and we had become really good friends because Matt's has political ambitions. And so he loves to study history to figure out what he can and can't do in the future and what we can take going forward to change the world. And Matt called me and said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Mexico after COVID. And do you want to come with me?" And in that one call, I had to drop out of college and I moved to Mexico with Matt. We lived there for 3 months and Matt brought his whole CEO network. And we had like 15, 20 CEOs in Mexico and a bunch of villas. We just partied and had fun and had a good time. And I really got introduced to the adult world through that and changed a lot as a person. And Matt and I have just been really good friends since. We went to Thailand together. We've traveled to New York together. Um, we've been to countless more places. And yeah, we're just if something can happen to a group of friends, it's probably happened to Matt and I.
Yeah, I think we've got some pretty interesting plans ahead. Like, I want to do the tuk tuk rally in India, like racing across in
Yeah.
a three
Oh
wheel
yeah, we're
electric
gonna
tuk
get a
tuk.
group of homies together
Sounds
and
sick.
cross India from the bottom to the top. Um, I got
Of
Merrick on
India.
board for that, by the way. Yeah,
No
go
way.
for yeah, Merrick's coming. And so I'm gonna get like a group of some really sick friends who I'm not gonna give out their names, but people in NASA, people in the defense industry, people in startup space. So just get a bunch of sick people and then go from the bottom to the top of India in an electric rickshaw. So like those crappy little things that you see in third world countries without like sides and just a roof with an engine. We're gonna do cross India in that. We're gonna spend my 21st birthday in Vegas, and then I'm gonna ride across the country with one of my ex-employees and friends who's a professional truck driver. We're gonna drive around the West. We want to go elk hunting in Quebec this summer as well.
Yes. Oh, we should talk about the Quebec City thing. I have a friend who wants to go in June for like a few days. We talk about
Okay.
that not on a live stream.
Yes.
I guess someone has a. Let me pick out a question real quick. Do you want to do it on the future of Latin America?
Everyone asks you this every single live stream, and
Really? Why?
the answer is always
Ooh,
the same.
Indonesian Empire is cooler.
I'm still going to answer Latin America. Yeah, nothing good's going to happen. You guys are going to stay in the same place. Latin America has had the same ratio of income to America since the year 1800. Latin America both fails and succeeds at the same speed as the rest of the world. Like Latin America did well over the last 40 years, but they they can't keep up with just everyone else did better. So Latin America did good. Everyone else did better. Latin America stayed in the same place. What Latin America does, it takes trends from the rest of the world, like desire to like technocracy, capitalism, communism. Just takes them further, but doesn't do them effectively. And then Latin America gives up and moves on to the next trend. In the same way, people might get involved in toxic dating structures so that rather than solving their internal problems. So I think like Latin America could have right and left wing dictatorships as the economy falls apart. And I read a really interesting book that charted the history of democracy in Colombia versus the price of coffee. So when coffee prices are high, Colombia is a democracy. When coffee prices are low, it becomes a military dictatorship because their economy is so dependent on coffee. And that's a lot of Latin America. For Indonesia, Indonesia is really difficult. It's a 50-50 split where it could either be Indonesia is weird, where you do see a precedent of state formation in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, where Thailand wasn't a country 500 years ago, it became a country. Burma wasn't a country 1,000 years ago, became a country. Same with Vietnam. Indonesia, we've been seeing useful state building where there was no concept of the Indonesian nation 100 years ago. But since then, there's been a lot of effort to produce an Indonesian nation. But the problem is Indonesia is massive. It goes from London in the east to Kyrgyzstan, London in the west to Kyrgyzstan in the east, if you overlay it over Europe. And there's over 600 languages. The geography makes no sense. Can we just get rid of Rudyard Lynch, simp? I've tried to mute him.
Sure. Rudyard Lynch simp, we're gonna like flag some of your stuff. So like, chill. Or we're gonna like have to ban you.
Yeah. It's funny, I recognize a lot of people here, like Prime. I've seen Prime in every single one of like my various servers. Yeah, so Indonesia has been trying to build a nation, but they're going at so much grain. And so I could see Indonesia develop nationhood in the same manner as like Thailand, Siam, Burma. But at the same time, they've got a lot going against them. And I could also see the Indonesian national project fail, and it's 50-50.
Wait, you think that they actually have a chance? Like, I assume that Indonesia's going to fragment like crazy and just blow up in some kind of nutso war for a couple decades.
I think it's 50-50. Yeah, they have been trying to build an Indonesian identity, and one of the strengths Indonesia has is that there's an Indonesian nation. So in a place like Kenya did nation building very poorly, where what happens is that whoever's in power has their tribe in power, and they take away from the central government and give it to their tribal people. So the Kikuyu have historically had a lot of power. The Kikuyu take it away from, let's say, the Maasai. They take the Maasai's cows and then reappropriate them to the Kikuyu. And that's the problem with Nigeria or Ethiopia, where in most African countries, the government becomes a vehicle for one tribe to oppress the others. In Indonesia, that's less the case because, first of all, Islam is Matt has been breeding. There are now two of him. He has cloned his identity so that one can be a politician and one can be a CEO.
I'm not sure where the second one came from.
It's your doppelganger.
Bjorn? I think Bjorn might be a troll lord right now.
And Bjorn is Matthew's right-hand man. In the same way, Merrick is my right-hand man, and Merrick was supposed to be in this chat. But then he had an emergency, so he couldn't come. And Indonesia's got the shared Muslim people. They also tried to build a national identity around a fake ideology that their leader Sukarno made up that doesn't actually make sense. I forget its name. And then they also have the Bahasa Indonesia language, where in Kenya, for example, people speak English, where in Indonesia, there's a merchant language called Indonesian, and then no one speaks Indonesian as their native language. It's one of the easiest languages in the world. And then from that, it can spread around. And it would be so much harder if Javanese, which is the language of Java, that's like 60% of Indonesia's inhabitants, was the dominant language, because Indonesia would then seem like a Javanese colonial project. Indonesia kind of is a Javanese colonial project, but it's less that way with Indonesian as the dominant language, not Javanese.
Wait, Indonesian's an easy language to learn?
Exact same grammatical structure as English. It's
wow.
And a lot of the words are easy. So a lot of it is simple structure. So let's say there's a word for good and better. The word for good would be good, and then with Indonesian lingual structure, it would be gooder for better.
Huh. Interesting.
For Indonesian, they structured it in a manner for the merchants to speak to everyone with. It's a designed language, basically.
When did it form?
I don't know. If I had to make a guess, probably early modern period. Let me look this up. But it only became official in the 1950s because until then, Dutch was the dominant language, and Indonesia had absolutely no ethnic identity under the Dutch. And the Dutch ruled through Eurasians, where like the Dutch never like bringing women over to their colonies because they were all about making money, and women distract from that. The Dutch were the original Sigma grind set, and so the Dutch guys would show up in the East, then they would have sex with native women, and then the Eurasian children would become their bureaucrats.
Damn.
Yeah. Bahasa Indonesia, I'm looking up what the origin of that is.
Ooh, I see another interesting one is I remember, Rudyard, you told me that you think that Bangladesh and Pakistan are going to get absorbed by India at some point. And
Yeah.
I think it makes sense, but the religious stuff is so powerful that I don't know how that could possibly happen.
Yeah.
Unless they just
I mean,
fall into complete anarchy and get kind of absorbed.
I think Hindu nationalists will go through it. So Indian nationalists will then hate me and then demand I make a video about this, where they
Do you want to avoid it then?
no, Indian nationalists can they have no control over me. I'm a free man, and so I think India will experience a period of fascism or something close to it, where India lines up exactly for a secular crisis in the same way as India or America, and the I had an assistant go through vital statistics on India, and it's absolutely horrifying. And so I think India is going to go through a period of radicalism, and I need to make a video explaining how India is like Tsarist Russia before World War One, and so India will go through a crisis, and then like Europe after World War II, the Indians are a very deep and contemplative people. At least certain subsets of them are. The leadership are, and after they will commit atrocities under their leadership, they will then chill out and become more back to what their normal self is, where India is normally a very peaceful, accepting place, where Hinduism believes that all religions are ladders to God. And I think once the Indians chill out, and also once India becomes wealthy, because as of now, India exerts very little outwards economic power, where I view countries, are they either sucking in economic power or are they putting it out? And an example of that would be America in the 19th century was taking in massive investments from Europe, but then it wasn't exporting economic power outwards. What then happened in the 20th century was America became very wealthy and started investing in other countries, economically controlling Canada and Latin America. And India is in a position where India is too busy figuring its own economic shit out to export economic influence outwards, which is why China, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka are all Chinese allies, or Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Burma are all Chinese allies, because strangely enough, China is capable of projecting more economic power outwards inside India's neighborhood than India is inside India's neighborhood, because China is just so much more economically powerful than India, or economically compelling than India. But as India gets more economically compelling, it naturally and then it basically fell into civil war. And same with the 16th century, the crisis of the time of troubles. And in both cases, what happened was that the Russians have, since the time of the Mongols, Russia has been an oligarchy that governed through through various noblemen, and the noblemen have become oligarchs. The noblemen can backstab the monarchy if they don't think the monarchy is doing a good job. The thing I do wonder about is how much stress can Russia take? Or various interests would try to break apart Russia, and I'm not sure how effective they are, because what I have in my map is that the Turks take a part of Russia and split it off, the Chinese take a part of Russia and split it off. And I think that's plausible. And something someone else said in the comments, which is true, is that we've literally seen plans for Russia after Ukraine to take Moldova. Moldova is not part of NATO, and so the Russians could take Moldova. Taking Moldova is like taking the state of Delaware, but they must have a more expansive plan after Moldova, But that plan's just insane. Like, from looking at Ukraine, if the Russians are not fighting well in Ukraine, if they invade Poland, they're not even, yeah. I mean, Russia's population collapsed by half in the 15th century and they stayed unified. So it could be a situation like that. Russia had a really Russia had a really nasty late Middle Ages. So Russia had massive population collapse due to the Black Death. Their population like halved due to the Black Death, and then it went up again, and then it halved again in the 15th century due to Tatar raids, another plague and famine, the start of the mini ice age, and then their population collapsed by a third in the 17th century. And on top of that, as that happened, what happened was that the compromise that was determined was that the czar would give the noblemen everything to oppress the peasants. And so and so the peasants got worse and worse deals, where at the time in the Middle Ages, Russian peasants were very free and generally well fed. And then over time they got, so there was a whole deal where serfdom didn't exist. Then serfdom started existing. Then serfs had to work 2 days a week for their lord. Then serfs could leave their lord on like the weekend, basically. Then serfs could leave their lord 1 day a year. Then it became an alternating days every other year, and they had to have settled all their debts. And then serfs could never leave their lord, and that was a process that took like 100 years.
That sounds like a great time and place to be around. Wow.
You know the movie Mad Max Fury Road?
Yeah, I watched it
It's
recently.
one
It's
of my
pretty good.
dad's favorite movies of all time. He said he based it off reading Russian history.
What? How?
Yeah, he said he based like the horrifying Australian apocalyptic world. He said he imagined treating people as awfully. He tried to create an Australia where people were treated as terribly as people were in Russia in like the 18th century.
Huh.
How long do you want to keep this going for, Matt?
Interestingly, it just reached its peak. It's at like 311 concurrent listeners inside Pearl
Let me
now, and
go
there's
for
still
15 minutes.
Sure. We should see what we can do to plug this on YouTube to get more people to port over, because there's like 700 people on YouTube watching with lag, and I think the audio temporarily cut out on YouTube because of something with our VPS. We're porting it to YouTube.
Yo, Matt,
Sorry, what?
the title was
Mhm.
already Intro to Perl Discussion. Go to Perl for better audio.
Okay, so that's all we can do.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I guess we'll keep going for it. What's the topic we should hit, Rudyard? Oh, the coming Caesars. I love that topic. Rudyard's like, again?
Matt, just don't like release a manifesto here of saying, I am the new Caesar.
No. Yeah, could you walk through the whole hypothesis? I tried to explain it to someone the other day, and I didn't do a very good job at it.
Okay.
So like, I want to hear this so I can improve it.
The coming Caesars is a theory invented by the French historian Amaury de Riencourt. Numbered them 100 to 1, kept on conquering them because they had lost the warlike spirit to fight off the barbarians. And that's because governments want people to lose warlike spirit so they're easier to control. And we see this across history. The Romans lost the Germanic barbarians because of it. But as people, first of all, lose religion, lose their independence as individuals, and lose their inner strength, people look to Caesars. And Caesars like messiahs who their role is to become strong men to control the society. And the strong men who are dictators, they rise to power and then they destroy the previous period of whatever regime the government had. In Greece and Rome, that was freedom. And Amaury de Riencourt wrote this beautiful book that compared the development of Western to Greco-Roman civilization. And the book it does a great job of paralleling how America is like the next Rome and Greece is like the next Europe. Or Europe is like the next Greece. And his prediction is that America will see the rise of a new Caesar. And we've seen that sort of thing in that the power of the presidency has grown precipitously over the last century. Like the president can declare war right now, and that wasn't the case 100 years ago.
I have no idea what the details are going to look like, because I imagine like what I'm kind of thinking is we'd just be more like France style, where you told me the French president is basically king for like what, 6 years?
Yeah,
Do you think that's just going to be default?
the French president has a ridiculous amount of power, and that's because Latin culture is like a more of a macho vibe, where Latin leaders. This is one of the things Amory talks about, where like Latin countries, leaders can just be total savages. So it's normal for French leaders to have mistresses, to like get into drama, to have big egos. And that's the case for South America too, where another historian I respect, Leland DeWitt Baldwin, said Anglo-Saxons are less individualistic than Latins. Yo, The Tree of Culture is an amazing book. Y'all gotta have to read it. But where Latin Americans are such individualists that they don't believe in other people's individuality, while Anglo-Saxons are individualists as much to not threaten other people's individuality. And so in France, France has had like 5 republics, and the last republic built itself upon America and Britain a lot. But then that didn't have enough space for French culture. So what Charles de Gaulle did was pare down the power of the democracy and basically turn France into an elected monarchy, where like the giant character of the president. Y'all still there? Hello. Hi. Matt's
I can hear
gone.
you on my end. I think Matt disconnected temporarily.
Okay, is that you, Bjorn?
This is Joe.
Okay, hi Joe. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too.
Okay, so let me read the comments to just get through some cool questions. A lot of Afghans are supporting partition between the various ethnic groups. What do you think of the future of Afghanistan? Afghanistan will always exist. I think Afghanistan will exist as a country as long as Iran or India don't become superpowers, because and then it basically sorry, I just heard my own YouTube audio, which was awkward. But as long as India and Iran don't become superpowers, because Afghanistan can exist in its form because everyone hates it so much that no one can push it in a way to change it. Where the Pashtuns like to turn Afghanistan into a Pashtun ethno-state. The ethnic minorities don't want that to happen. The ethnic minorities can't form their own countries because the Pashtuns don't like that. And so Afghanistan survives on the map because it exists in a permanent state of limbo. And unless something like, if a when the world is the world's basically become a dystopian shit show. Like, you know, those giant alien species that you see, the giant alien horde. Humanity became that alien horde. I think 40K lore is really cool. We've got a lot of running jokes in my friend group with Matt and Merrick about 40K lore, but I like fantasy better. I think 40K is too dark and grim. I don't like grim dark stuff. My life is hard enough already, and I don't need to read. Like, I don't read dramas. I don't read like dystopias because like life's hard enough already. I don't need more sadness. Cool. Are you back, Matt?
Oh yeah, I'm back. Cool. I'm glad this kept going. I have a quick question for the audience. Hey guys in the audience, if you got an SMS message from the waitlist, could you let me know if a URL went through? Just to fire off in the comments. And also for you guys on YouTube, hop on over to Pearl. This is where the comments are coming from and where the audio is. YouTube has a very long lag and sometimes cuts out. So this is where you should be. And we'll be doing these on Saturday at 1 p.m. EST. Plus also Pearl's open all the time. Yeah.
Plus, you guys should hop up on here, have chats. Pearl acts like a Discord, except you can pay me at like an OnlyFans account without the sex. So we can go on hot dates talking about the 30 Years War. You can ask me to draw maps, stuff like that. Matt, a question from Princip: How did you make so many interesting friends across so many walks of life?
I think that one's for you, Rudyard.
Yeah, it's honestly just a connection thing where like I started out with, it's partially YouTube, partially through Matt, where Matt introed me to his network of successful young people. And I just love talking to people. Like I'm an introvert, but in a lot of ways, I'm a very extroverted person where I love making connections and meeting people from different walks of life. And partially from this YouTube channel where there's lots of very interesting WhatifAltHist fans. Like I've met Matt through WhatifAltHist. My right-hand man, who's an amazing guy, met him through WhatifAltHist. Through WhatifAltHist, I talked to hedge fund guys. I talked to professional truckers. I talked to people in Germany, people in Brazil. WhatifAltHist is just a lot of really cool people. And you're going to find that the more time you spend on Pearl. But it's honestly just leapfrogging. And people are like, it's how do you build a good network? And I can't tell you because it's one of those things where you meet the right person and that person shows you more people and they meet more people, meet the super connectors who just know lots of different people and then work from there. And I just got lucky and I just met a couple different super connectors.
So actually this ties in. So one of the reasons why we created Pearl was because I made such a large number of friends from meeting Rudyard, because if someone else loves history and geopolitics and I do too, we're going to have like a hour-long conversation the first time we meet. I was in Richmond, Virginia at a friend's party and I just mentioned one of Rudyard's videos and this guy was like, that's my favorite channel. And we became friends and just chatted for hours, even though we're the opposite ends of the political spectrum. So one of the big reasons for this is because if you bring people together who love the same thing, something cool is going to happen. So I imagine if you guys spend time and talk to other people in the chat, you're probably going to end up making close friends like I did. So that's one of the main reasons why this exists. It's trying to rebuild the social fabric. Like your average American was a member of 4 to 6 social clubs in 1900, and now it's like 0.5. We've seen the complete atomization, really destruction of the social fabric of the West. And there's a ton of stats that really look at this. And so, I mean, as large of a vision as it sounds, to be honest, kind of the goal of this is to, rebuild that, but based upon shared passions, interests, and hobbies.
Something that would be really cool for you guys to do is do it geographically. And we're working on that in the next couple of weeks where like there's going to be a Pearl chat for Philadelphia, Pearl chat for Hong Kong. And then you guys can meet up for drinks, or if you're underage, still drinks, but like technically not drinks. But, and yeah, I mean, I hope WhatifAltHist makes a great community where it's not a cult, but like where we share information and like we build friendships and you guys can see more of me because I really do like my fans. I spend a lot of time with my fans, but YouTube just isn't a good service for that.
Yeah, it's true. Some people are asking about, I guess, some people are asking about like Pearl. I'll do a little bit on, but I think we should go back to history in a hot second. Yeah, so like I mentioned, to summarize, Pearl is basically the idea is it's a place to find your tribe based on shared passions, interests, and hobbies. Usually that's centered around a creator, but sometimes it's not. Like, for example, we're currently building a Lord of the Rings community. So we build wait lists, and once they hit critical mass, then we launch with live stream audio events that we broadcast to the existing social channels to progressively draw more and more people in. But really, the objective is not just for people to be active. One, there's a call going on. It's for people to just be like bored cooking dinner in the car and hop in an audio room and just go like riff about, Russia and Ukraine or something of that nature with other people who are super fans of the topic and highly educated on it. And then, to actually become legit IRL friends with people via the feature Rudyard mentioned, the geographic based rooms. But yeah, what we're doing right now is we're a seed stage startup in based out of Silicon Valley with some pretty wild investors and stuff like Y Combinator, TL Fellowship, Naval Ravikant, Paul Graham, founders of Coinbase, DoorDash.
12 billionaires.
Yeah, 10 billionaires back the company. So pretty heavy hitters. And we're trying to get this critical mass for this one community to basically prove out how many people we can get in here, what retention looks like, and then go raise our next round of funding and basically build these communities for every interest in the world, like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Disney, General History Channel, how to make cars, cigars, flying, like anything, you name it. So yeah, that's what we're doing, but we have some big ambitions, so we'll see what happens.
I've seen like 3 comments for why we don't have dark mode, and the comments are basically
dark mode.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of comments for dark mode, and really dark mode tests very poorly with girls. So like if this was a service for the boys, it would be dark mode, but it's not.
I think we can make a dark mode and every community can choose it. The main thing we're focusing on, everybody, to give you, actually, I guess it's probably important. So to give you an idea for the roadmap for Pearl, this is our first, we've done 4 alpha tests. This is our first beta test. We're doing events every weekend for the next few weeks. And then we need to go build lots of other communities. Our main thing we're doing right now is bug smashing, but this has actually worked a lot smoother than I expected. And then it's marketing. So the main thing is like, how do you get a hold of the community? Because it's like, let's say we had a referral system and you guys got some cool perk, like to hop up on stage and talk with Rudyard one-on-one for referring people. That's great, except that most of us don't know each other because the only thing we share in common is that we subscribe to Rudyard on YouTube. So the marketing thing is the main thing we're hitting, as well as like allowing a round table audio room so we could all hop up on stage and talk together and with Rudyard, and then the geographic based chat channels. And then we're going to build an app as well, but that takes a lot of resources and we need the push notifications for obvious reasons. So that's kind of our roadmap. And we're hoping to do a Series A round of funding, which is usually between 10 and $20 million, but can go as high as 60 million if you've got some nutso company going on. We're going to probably push for that sometime looking at it in 3 to 4 months and try and pull trig by 6 months. And I'm trying to target something pretty big. Yeah, but it all starts here. Yeah. Anyway, back to history.
How long are we doing this format? Isn't it like 3 a.m. for you?
It's 1:45. Down with another 15 minutes if you are.
Yeah, finish for the hour. Cool. Okay. I think this is like the 1920s equivalent, where like in the 20s you would just hang out for 2 hours and like at the club, and this is just our new club.
Oh, true. Except digital. I have one more thing read for them before. Hey guys, if you've got if you found bugs in the product, if you have suggestions for features, if you have ideas, please put them in the chat right now and add a bunch of plus symbols beforehand so I could quickly and easily identify your comments for recommendations. Yeah, so hit us up with them for sure. Starting to go. If you're starting a militaria collective group, Elliot Smith, if you could add more information on that, would be interesting. Also, if any of you guys are YouTubers with like larger channels, put a plus symbol and let me know. We're going to be launching a bunch more creators.
So
also, there's so many comments. I'm going to have to read through these afterwards because there's just too many. But keep hitting them. I'll read every single one of them, and I'll email you guys.
Any questions about history, me or Matt as people, Pearl? Anything. Is it impossible China will invade Taiwan this coming year from the Lao Y video? Yes, but not now because we're about to hit monsoon season. I'm actually thankful that China didn't invade Taiwan because their window would have been April, but they didn't for whatever reason. Although it looks like they're building up for it. They're doing everything they would do if they would invade Taiwan, including troop buildup.
Oh, there's one interesting space predictions. Rudyard, you want hit us with yours? I'd love to hear them.
I made a video about this. So I'm actually going to make a podcast series when I hit 500,000. And I've got a couple of friends that are experts in space warfare that I want to bring on for podcast episodes. But yeah, America is going to colonize space soon. And I don't think anyone except America will really get involved. An interesting story I have actually is that China for decades would not release science fiction or space movies because they knew the Americans would reach space first. So beforehand, they wanted to make it look like space was totally unimportant and to incentivize people to disrespect space before the Americans inevitably colonized it. And so America is going to colonize space. I don't see America doing that now because we're so internally divided. Like, and like half the population thinks colonizing space is a bad idea, which I think is just dumb. I think colonizing space is the best thing we could do as a civilization now. And I think America will colonize space in the middle of the century most powerfully because I'm friends with a guy who's I'm actually friends with multiple people who are top level experts in space. And one of them thinks that we're going to see a 100% decrease in the cost of space technology over the next 20 years. And so once that happens, it's just space is going to be a lot more viable. America will also be unified once it's done with this crisis. And this friend has a brilliant idea. Matt's actually helping this friend form a company right now. Idea for a space elevator where it's an elevator, but it's zeppelins on top of each other, and it's a gun mechanism. So you have a gun, you fire upwards from one and then you fire upwards from one segment of the elevator to the other, and the elevator isn't tethered to the ground. It's tethered with zeppelins on top of each other. And I just think that's a really cool idea. And so once we see space becoming it's easier to colonize, then we're going to do it towards the middle of the century. And I think Mars is an obvious option. The moon's another option. The moon would probably become an industrial center because of its low gravity, to make things for the rest of space.
So I wanna hop in on this one. So I'm really into space. I guess background how that happened was my family's all like NASA. So my godfather was an astronaut, and my dad was deputy director of the space station, and so they kind of like indoctrinated me with it in the beginning. Uh, yeah, and like I admire Musk intensely, like everyone does because of it. Anyway, my thoughts are, I think that the United Kingdom is the father of the United States, and it birthed this child. And America basically took all the best attributes of Europe in general, and it took a lot of the ambitious people, I'd say as well, or like the wild people who are very risk taking. So you see America be very powerful culture. I think our destiny as a civilization and nation, and if we die having accomplished these things, because everything dies, a nation is just an organism at a large scale, and same with the civilization. Our destiny is one to basically bring about an international global order, like a neo Rome that's not abusive, with democracy, republic for everybody, as much as possible. It doesn't work everywhere, and global peace as much as possible. And then the more important one is to colonize the moon and Mars and basically birth a child that's greater than America is. So I'd say America is greater than Europe, and we want to birth a child that's greater than us. So my hope is that by the time we die, we basically see the Jamestown settlement on the moon and on Mars, and we look at it like, oh, like this is like a small research station, like nothing's going to really happen. And then if you fast forward 500 years, like I imagine if like right when I died, I'd get to see what the next 1,000 years of humanity's history looks like as a gift before it all ends. I know it's not going to happen, but it just seems cool. And I could see, it basically it all spread, and that we would see the birth of an independent nation on each of those, planets that represent all the best things of America, but even more. And then God knows where we go from there. So, I mean, that's my hope.
There's a beautiful comment that goes, Matt is indoctrinated into the space propaganda. The moon is made of cheese.
Yeah. I think America needs manifest destiny, and we need to push into space for it. So I think that Elon Musk has invented the modern caravel. I'm probably mispronouncing that. And that you're going to need to have an American political leader and coalition that really goes full force with it, and just sends it into like insane gear. Because like it's very hard to wield a nation, but if you can wield a nation properly, it's infinitely tens of thousands of times more powerful than what any individual company can do. And it takes eras of high political cohesion or great crisis, which I think we're about to see, both of them, one after the other. And so I think if you're able to pair the technology available from what SpaceX is doing with the right American political leader who can get the will of the nation behind it, you're going to see a new era begin for humanity. And America will be remembered forever because of it.
I agree. Alexei Kedeon, a good friend of mine, who I'm riding in his truck in a month around to the American West. He asks, y'all have many creators on Pearl yet other than Rudyard?
No, Rudyard's the very first one. We did 4 alpha tests beforehand where we knew it wasn't going to work, but we just wanted to figure stuff out. So this is actually the very first event of us putting it live. We've spent a year of obsessing, our entire team has, over this. And I mean, it's definitely works. It's a hit. So from here, it's just increasing the marketing and scaling like crazy. We have a nuts plan for it. If any of you guys are VCs, feel free to hit me up. We've got a pretty sick Rolodex, but hell, might as well. Also, if you're like startup founders, always love to chat with startup founders, especially if you like history. Last thing sorry, go on.
I feel like there probably are VCs instead of startup founders who are listening to this.
Yeah, I assume so. So Andrew, to create communities on Pearl, you have to email us. Just email info@pearl.link and make the title say create community. More than happy to help you with it. One of the critical things is that you need to get a minimum of 300 people in to have a sustainable atomic community for it to keep rolling. And so you have to basically do a lot of marketing to build a waitlist to get there. So typically we go with creators who have at 300K plus subscribers on YouTube, or like 1 million plus on TikTok in order to get there. But our marketing tools are advancing rapidly, so we'll be able to go smaller and smaller channels quickly. Last question I'll answer, and then Rudyard, some history stuff. is the future of, future of Disney. I don't know. Like, I love Disney a lot. It's fantastic.
They're really woke right now. Like, did you hear that?
Oh
Did you
yeah,
see
I
their
hate that.
meeting? Did you see their meeting where they said, "Oh yeah, my not so secret gay agenda, where I want to make like the main characters of most Disney movies now gay."
Yeah, I'm not a fan of radical social justice. I being in college made me have some very strong feelings on that topic. So that pains me. But once this whole crisis in America is done, I think we'll see Disney go back to producing content I like more. They're
I
still a
love them
great company.
too. Yeah.
Oh, they're so
Google
good.
and social. What are your thoughts on Google and social media?
Google is, like one of the most impressive companies in human history and going to keep rocking for a very long time. And I don't think people are going to succeed in disrupting it for a very long time. I think it's going to be here
Next,
for like a century and a half. Social
next
media is the
East
most
India
interesting.
Company.
No, not necessarily. I think it's going to be here. Like Standard Oil is still here. It's just fragmented. I think Google is going to be here for like a century and a half. When you have network effects as a company, you could really stay around forever, even if you do a shitty job with your product, like YouTube arguably has.
Like the East India Company.
Oh, interesting. I assume they were well run, but I guess that makes sense.
Let me go on a rant about the East India Company after this. Social media, I think, is both positive and negative. I think it lets me exist, and otherwise I'd be a depressed kid in college. And it disrupts so many things that need disrupting. Like, I think the internet is the only functional part of our society. It's the only new thing, because everything else, whether from like work, the government, the dating scene, the economy, the financial scene, every element of our society is broken. But like when I look at YouTube, I look at something that actually works, and that fills me with hope. And then Instagram doesn't, like, Instagram works, and which gets you the bad side, where social media also has negative health effects, especially for women, where it feels like the young female suicide and depression rate, it just goes through the fucking roof with the start of social media. I'd say Instagram's probably the one that has the worst effect in society, and YouTube's one of the best.
Yeah, I'd agree. My take on this, so as a note context, you guys probably imagine, but I've founded Pearl. So my take on it is effectively that basically you saw the initial wave of social media be broadcast only tools, which allowed the birth of the creator economy. And the creators have effectively organized all of the world's people based on passions, interests, and hobbies. But I don't think it's the final step. Typically, you see in an industry, the first wave is advertisements, and then you see it have direct monetization. And direct monetization usually is far more powerful than advertising revenue. And so you saw this with XXX, where you first had, ad sites for XXX, and now you have OnlyFans. And OnlyFans is much larger, more profitable company than the ones that preceded it. So my take on what's about to happen to social media is a titanic shift. I think that we have all the ad-based broadcasting networks that effectively act as the sources of users, really, for porting people into a freemium community-based platform, aka like what we're building here. So like my end vision for Pearl is that you basically take the top 1% of every single fan of every YouTuber, TikToker, Instagrammer in the world, and you have a community here that you aggressively market to their existing channels. And then those people actually build a real community that's friends with each other. And you have different sub-segments of the community based on geography where people meet up for drinks, and it helps rebuild the social fabric. And then there's, of course, like, you can't just have something like this be free. There has to be financial. Like, to just be blunt, like, there's a reason why Rudyard and other creators are not involved with their Discords or Reddits. And it's because, one, those products are not designed for it. And two, it's because they're not monetizable. Like, at the end of the day, like, you could do this thing for fun, but there's got to be some cash behind it. And so trying to build a large number of users who are subscribers to the community is very important, as well as people who do things like, let's say you want Rudyard to draw you a map. Well, right now you can go message him and pay him to do that. Or say you want him to edit your, like, not edit, but review your YouTube video, for example, or your essay, you can do that. So at the end of the day, that just has to be part of it. But the freemium platform makes it such that everyone can be part of it. So my take on social media is that it is going to be a titanic shift that occurs very quickly. And we know people hunger for it because of Clubhouse. Clubhouse audio went from small to huge fast. And in the beginning, it was magical. And the reason it was magical was because you had like 1,000 people who were all huge startup nerds together in audio rooms just like this talking, except it was a round table. And I was addicted. Like when they had 500 users, average person spent 5 hours a day on there talking with people. And so I think that like they then diluted the base to where they had people interested in different topics, and it became weaker and weaker. Pearl doesn't suffer that problem because every community is specific around a topic and only filled with radical fans of that. And so I think that we're probably, once we launch Roundtables, going to be able to mimic a couple hours a day usage for a lot of people. And then once we have those stats, it positions us to go raise a Series A round of funding and pop off to the moon. Also, Pearl's not an app yet. Anyway, I rambled. Hope you enjoyed. Back to history.
We've got 3 minutes left, guys, so I'm going to answer a single question.
No, we've only done a seed round, Harrison.
Then,
sorry, I want to interject.
I'm looking for questions. Guys, ask me questions.
That cat is adorable.
Yes.
Churchill rise from the dead.
No. What do you think of Elon's buying? What result do you think Elon buying Twitter will have? I think it's remarkably positive. I love that Elon bought Twitter. Like, I'm so happy. I just think Elon is one of the few cowboys left in America, in a nation that becomes more and more like cogs. And I think Elon's actually going to do free speech. I think he's going to make it a lot better. He's going to, I think Twitter is going to become a place of a lot better discourse. And it's going, because now it's just, Twitter is a place to create left-wing jihads. And I think that once it's balanced out, my hope is that, and this won't happen, is that Twitter will become a center of meaningful discourse like the Enlightenment. But I don't trust that because it's hard for, imagine like fucking Adam Smith or John Locke or Voltaire writing tweets to each other for the discussions.
Damn, I'm very excited that he bought Twitter as well. I think it's going to be remarkably positive, and their valuation is going to probably 10x. And it makes me even more intimidated by Elon Musk because not only does he have Tesla and SpaceX, but now he's basically going to also have like Zuckerberg power. I mean, like, holy smokes, this guy's like Da Vinci infused with venture capital and like technology. It's insane to watch. But yeah, I mean, I'm pumped by it. However, I'm also kind of bummed because it's going to make marketing a bit more difficult.
One of the jokes in the tech community, and I'm not part of the tech community, I know a lot of folks who are, is that everything is venture scalable. And the joke basically is that there's so much, we're here of the highest capital in human history. And what that means is you can put money into dumb stuff. And so people in tech, because of inflation, people are going to put their money into anything. And so the joke is like, hey, I heard there's this guy who runs this falafel store around the corner, and he's moving from making falafels to falafels and sausages. This is a venture scalable business. Let's give him $5 million to do that. Or like in the show Silicon Valley, an example Matt used in the show Silicon Valley, they make a fake app to look at fruit, and then someone made a real app with backing to look at rocks. And it's just like Matt and I could spend all day talking about really, really dumb ideas we've heard for tech companies that have millions of dollars backing them.
Oh, it's so funny. I mean, there's a lot of dumb stuff, but there's also a lot of like really incredible stuff. Oh yeah, I will take a moment to remind everyone as we near the end here. There is a paid subscription if you want to be a part of it. So at the moment, there are various recorded, basically podcasts from Rudyard on topics, and there's also maps that are underneath the paywall. And these recordings of these live stream audios are probably going to be put beneath the paywall as well. Because I mean, just straight up, you have to create a financial incentive behind a product like this to really get the creator heavily invested and for more and more stuff to happen. So yeah, we have a secular cycle, Turchin cycle video under the paywall that talks about Black Death and the 100 Years' War. And then we have another that's the mythology behind Lord of the Rings. And I believe we have another on the Mayan civilization that we're going to post. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, cool. Well, also last thing, guys, is once again, if you have product suggestions that you're really adamant about, or if you are a creator, or if you know creators who ideally are over like 100K on YouTube or whatever, hit me up via email. It's info@pearl.link. And yeah, we'll chat.
Cool. Okay, peace, guys. A lot of fun. We'll do this every week for the next couple weeks.
Cool. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.